Hello. All right, we'll be starting shortly. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, whether you're joining us now or later on, looking at a recording of this live session. Thank you for joining us. This is a poverty simulation experience that we are going to do together, coupled with a discussion before and after. You are welcome to participate in that discussion now if we have people that want to participate, or you can do this personally by yourself later on. Just use the questions that I ask and write them down, or just be introspective and ask these questions. Either way, glad you're participating, glad you're thinking about these things, that you're interested in these things, and I am excited to start. So, we are going to do a simulation that is over American poverty specifically. So, in a previous session, we talked about both global and domestic poverty. This one is specifically around what it looks like to be in poverty in America. So, what you're going to do is you're going to go on playspent.org. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. It is playspent.org. And you'll go online. You can either share your screen or like split your screen so that you can see Zoom and do it, or you can just do it on your own. That's totally up to you. And then I'll share my screen and we can do this together. So before we get started, I have a few questions that I would like to ask for you to think about. The first one is, how do you define poverty? What does that look like? So what does poverty look like? Maybe start big, like what does it look like globally? What have you heard? What do you think? What does it look like on a more national domestic level? And what does it look like in the day-to-day in your life? Let's take a moment to think about that. You're welcome to pause this video if you're watching this later, or you can say something now. It's up to you. All right. So now that you've asked yourself, how do you define poverty? Think about whether you've ever done anything like a poverty simulation before. So, have you ever done something, or are your lived experiences something that relate to poverty? And what does that feel like? What do you think that feels like? And then finally, why are you watching this? Why are you online right now? What brings you to the poverty simulation? What is important to you about poverty? What experiences have you had thus far in your life that have brought you to care about the poor, that have brought you to relate to the poor, um, or people who have to identify as poor? And what are you looking forward to about this poverty simulation? All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and get started. We are going to go and we are going to do this simulation together. You can make your own decisions on the placement.org. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to make my own choices as I go along. I'm not going to talk while I'm doing it. I'm just going to go and you can read along, or you can go and do it yourself, and then we'll ask some follow-up questions. So let's get started.
I'll share for me. I think I'm here in the studio and I was also doing it, and I've done this before as well. And I've never thought about the choices to make behind either paying for something for your child or another need such as healthcare. And I think those are two pretty big things for me and that stood out for me because that, I think for most folks, you want the best for your children and you want them to have experiences and opportunities. But it's just a great example when you have limited resources and that scarcity. How do you decide on what do you choose to pay for? So for me, I was like, well, do I sacrifice my health? And then what does that look like as far as, a continuous care for my child? If I'm not well, how can I take care of my child? So that really stood out to me.
I know.
Hey, Kaylee,
I was like,
we
oh,
can't
great,
hear
I made
you.
it through the month. But then when I went to take the simulation again, I was reminded that rent is $800. And I don't know if you saw, but we finished with $7 in the bank account, which is not a lot of money. That barely buys you anything. So, and that's also with barely any food um, from when we went to the grocery store. The one time that we went to the grocery store. I go to the grocery store once a week just for myself and for my sister. So that was really tough for me, at least. Now, if you did this yourself, another question is, did you run out of the budget? Like, did you run out of a budget? And if so, why? What were your priorities? So when I was going through, I chose to prioritize my child most of the time. I don't know, I am not a mother, so I can't identify with that in the same way that a mother can, or a grandmother can, or a father can. But I do have siblings, and I know that I would always choose their health over my own. And I would always choose their happiness over my own. So when I was thinking, can I let them go and be on the soccer team, or can I let them have their $10 to spend when we go to the grocery store? Well, if it's between that and me doing whatever I'm doing, going somewhere, I mean, that's an easy choice for me. But also, I was struck by the comment that they made after I said no to going to the concert with my friends. It said, so many Americans that live in poverty um, don't have avenues to release their stress. And that is part of the cyclical nature of poverty, is that when we are living in a constant state of stress, everything only continues to get worse. So what do you do when you don't have an avenue to release? What do you do when you don't have any time by yourself? You're never prioritizing yourself. You're always putting your children first. So you can take a moment to think about which questions really threw you, like which questions were not what you were expecting. All righty. So another question is, based on your experience and knowledge, do you think this was an accurate depiction of the day-to-day life in people who live in communities that are struggling, that live in poverty? Remember, I asked at the beginning what your expectations were for poverty. Um, think about what you thought then and the questions that you read and the answers that you gave. What do you think now? A lot of you who are watching this right now or will watch it later are in higher education at this moment. So whether you were supposed to watch this or you were brought to watch this, sorry, one moment. Whether you were supposed to watch it or whether you're just choosing to watch it, I want you to consider that maybe things weren't the way that you thought. And what are you going to do with your higher education? What are you going to do with what you just did to change the future, to change the environments and the communities around you? Because you have a much bigger impact than you think you do. And finally, what about this simulation changes the way that you're thinking? Does it change the way that you think, or do you think the same thing? And if you do, that is totally okay. This is just meant to give you a different line of thinking, to see where other people are coming from, what different organizations and people that are coming from different communities say this is what it looks like in the day to day of someone living in poverty. So as you go through, I hope that you enjoyed this simulation or that it was thought provoking or whatever you took from it. I hope that you took something from it. You're welcome to go through the simulation again, use the questions again, but thank you for joining us.